Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on Who is Ambedkar and From Untouchability to the Constitution, the story of India's greatest social reformer. I mean, if you can imagine a world where your destiny is predetermined by your birth, where a person's worth is defined not just by their abilities or dreams, but by the label that society imposes on them. Today, we will delve into the extraordinary life of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. I mean, he is a man whose relentless pursuit of justice and human rights reshaped our nation. More than, just 115 years after his birth in 1981, Ambedkar's legacy continues to spark debate and inspire millions around the world. And we are here to unpack how one man's vision and encourage not just broke the chains of untouchability, but laid the foundation for a democratic and inclusive India and some other parts of the world. Let's begin with some numbers that defines Ambedkar's journey. As everybody knows that Ambedkar was born in 1891 in a society that shackled him with untouchability. Ambedkar defined every expectation of that. By the time he earned his doctorate from Columbia University, he had already begun challenging deep-rooted social hierarchies. In a remarkably short span, he went on one of the world's most diverse constitute assemblies where his vision did not just inspire debate, it transformed the law and the spirit of the India. These milestones remind us that the courage to question, to resist, and to rebuild can reimagine the very fabric of the society. Let's talk about some data here, because behind every revelation lie hard fact and tireless research. Did you know that Ambedkar's efforts significantly contributed to improving literacy rates among marginalized communities, be it Dalits or Adivasis? And his advocacy was instrumental in increasing their representation in the policy making and the public life. Some research also shows that since the mid of 20th century, access to education and employment to these marginalized communities has improved over 30%, 30. Moreover, the Indian Constitution reshaped under the supervision of the Dr. B.R. Ambedkar compromises over 400 articles and more than 100 amendments. And these are not just numbers that represent the dreams, struggles, and pursuit of just a society. As we, examine these data, we are not just reflecting on the past, we are envisioning a future where Ambedkar's ideals continue to evolve. Moving forward, today we are honored to have us a three distinguished guest speakers, each offering a unique lens on Ambedkar's legacy. First up, we have Dr. Sheetal Kamble. She is a senior research associate at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, India. Dr. Kamble will share an in-depth research on Ambedkar's role in transforming social structures and how his influence remained deeply embedded in the contemporary Indian society. Over to you, Dr. Kamble.
Okay, thank you, Heman. So before I start, how much time we have for
we have, hardly 7 to 8 minutes for each speaker.
Okay. Right. Thank you. My name is Dr. Sheetal Kamble from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and I'm a Dalit feminist from India. Last 12 years, I'm working on the issue of caste, class, gender, religion, violence, and education. So, particularly today's discussion is based on theoretical framework of Ambedkar and the experience and the reality of Dalit women. I just wanted to share within 5 to 7 minutes all about my journey to discuss about the Dalit women issue in particularly the context of the Ambedkar. So we always call as a Baba Sahib because Baba Sahib is, as in Maharashtra, I have a legacy of Ambedkar, and we always believe that Baba Sahib is the father. We have a father, and this is the Ambedkar. So who is an Ambedkar in the context of Dalit women? I'm trying to understand in different ways, and this is the reality of the Indian context. We believe that we are the ex-untouchables. So in ex-untouchables, after the independence, we have a constitution, we have a legal rights, we have a fundamental rights, everything is there. But still, the reality is totally different because we are not getting social justice, we are not following the democratic values, we are more violated than any other community because of the particularly caste. Now, I'm looking as a Dalit feminist. I'm looking as a in the context of Dalit feminist is to what is Ambedkar idea and who is an Ambedkar. Ambedkar for me is a feminist. He is a feminist who is a man in the Indian context who has the first time he talk about the patriarchy and the caste relationship. And that is very important to understand the context of Dalit. Another thing is that when you're looking at the Ambedkar, there are whole transformation of the social transformation towards the Buddhism. So most of the people are asking the Buddhism and Ambedkarism is different, but we always say the complete Ambedkarism only with the Buddhism because this is a social transformation. Looking at the Dalit women's reality, and last 12 years I'm working on the caste-based violence and looking at the whole Dalit women's position in the social society, in particular the rural village. The women are talking about the democratic values, women are talking about fundamental rights, women are talking about the untouchability practices, which is invisible or visible in the certain part of India. So this is very important to understand the who Ambedkar's idea of the liberation. So in the talking about the Dalit women, we are looking as a woman liberation. So all the feminist women are talking about the women liberation, socio-economic and political participation, Dalit women's participation, everything is they're talking about. But we as a Dalit woman, we are different from the other women because we are not considering as a woman as a homogeneous group, first of all. And we are always say that we are the heterogeneous group based on the caste. Because our reality of the women is a different from our other. So we are segregating ourselves not because we are different in a certain ways, but we are social condition and the social structure is defined our images. And that is we are the protocols last feminists, we are struggling with the mainstream feminist movement, where we never be heard and our problem has never been recognized. Looking at that sense, we are looking at the feminist idea is how it is related with Ambedkar, because Ambedkar was always talking about the caste and gender relationship, which has always been changed. Because every theoretical aspect of the feminist movement is related to the gender. When Dalit women is talking about, the Dalit women are talking about the caste, because the caste is a barrier for participation. Caste is a barrier for the social transformation. Caste is a barrier for the economical transformation. So everything is based on the caste. And that base of the caste is the only way to identify yourself. And this is our identity politics. When you're looking as a Dalit woman, we always talk about what is the Dalit? Dalit is not a derogatory word for us because there are a lot of debates and most of the Brahminical system is always talking about the Dalit, some kind of a poor people in this India, Dalit who has social condition, social economically weak section of the society. But as a Dalit, we always consider ourselves as a Dalit is a people who always talk about the equality. Ambedkar's idea of social transformation on the basis of on the context of the Dalit woman, where the woman is the central point to be discussed. Because the women, he always believed that there is a very interesting quote of Ambedkar, I measure the progress of the community through the women's participation, through the women education. So there are the different key points where Ambedkar has heroized in a democracy in a certain way, where we are talking of the social justice. We are not talking of the justice. So what is the idea of the social justice? When I was working with the Dalit women, and they are saying that we believe in the social justice. What is the meaning and idea of the social justice? So social justice is a justice not only for myself, but the justice for my society. And that is the idea is very clearly defined in by Dalit women. Another thing is when you're looking at the endogamy system in India, we are more suffering than any other women because we always believe that the endogamy is the very rigid form in India where the other women are not being engaged with any other caste and mostly the dominant caste. I'm not talking about the only upper caste because the Indian context is totally right now is very changed. Where is the dominant caste? So even the obviously there is a very caste category. There is other castes. They are more dominant than Brahmin. So I define myself as a Dalit woman. I always looking at Ambedkar's idea is that the dominant caste, how they are hierarchical positions and Varna system is connected with it and how they are enjoying their privilege to having their caste privilege. So this is the very exploiting things that the endogamy system is very rigid form in India where you cannot get married with any other girl, any other man who is in a different caste. So that endogamy system versus the Ambedkar's idea was to break down this endogamy system through the annihilation of caste. So idea of the annihilation of caste is always be attached with the liberation, social liberation, the women liberation. So when you're looking at the women liberation, we always believe that endogamy system. We wanted to think about it, what is endogamy system and how we can annihilate the caste system. Other aspect of Ambedkar is very important to understand the context of the participation. So when you're talking about the socio-economic and political participation, we are a socialist struggle. because I was doing the research on the women empowerment, and I had a lot of debate with the feminist movement. I had a lot of debate with many my guides and all this. The purpose of that, all things we are following for the United Nations, where United Nations already declared that the socio-economic and political participation and political empowerment of women, where we are struggling for the social empowerment. We are not struggling for the economic empowerment, we are struggling for the social empowerment. The reason was that we are explaining in a many platform that the social empowerment is we are attached to the caste, and that is a factor for every other women. So we are not looking at as a women, we are not a similar in this one context. And other thing is we are not acceptable for other women. So our images, our thought processes, our caste is always be a matter for other dominant caste women. So this is the reality of it. Another thing is that we are looking at there is a different aspect. One is the social justice. Economic empowerment is based on only the politically policy papers and programs, which is very important because we are we are forming the self-help group on the basis of caste and Mata Ramabai Ambedkar self-help group. That is, idea is very clear, but the idea is when we are looking at the executive, there we are socially excluded from the other governments and the socially excluded from the other society. Mostly the rural area, when you're looking at, I'm from the urban field, but when you're looking at the area of rural area, where the women's Dalits are struggle more than the other women's because they are socially boycotted from this community. When I was working the caste-based violence, there is a very interesting point and there is different kind of experience I try to understand. When caste added to your violence process, all the patterns of violence change. What is the reality of that? Because if you're talking United Nations framework of the violence, where we are talking of the physical, mental, emotional, economical violence, when we are looking at Dalit women's violence, is totally different because caste add, then all the patterns are changed. Then law and judiciary procedure is changed. Then community participation is changed. Then other thing is the social boycott system, hostility. Everything is increased. So there is no chance for Dalit women to interact, and even they are the more vulnerable in this society, where they don't get any kind of a social justice for see. Now, looking at the democratic values, where we have a lot of debates around that, why solidarity politics is very important for the feminist movement. We always believe that solidarity politics should be there because my concern, my issues, and other women's issues can come together hand in hand. We can go with these issues and we can discuss in the same pattern. But we are looking at the democratic values. Our solidarity politics is not based on the only gender. Our democratic value is based on the caste. Our democratic value is based on the patriarchy. Everything is based on the caste. So looking, another thing is that what is the main important crush to understand the Ambedkar idea of women liberation? So when I ask very illiterate women we always say that the illiterate women in a rural area, people consider that they have no idea about the Ambedkar's idea, Ambedkar thoughts and everything. But when I was conducting the research, the women are very passionately were saying that what is the crush of this idea of women liberation come from that. They say the education. And Ambedkar is the most contribution of the education. And it is, we have a legacy of Baba Sahib in Maharashtra. We always believe that the education is the important source of our life because education is only one process, social process. We can give them opportunity to women for a social transformation. There is a one way of education. In education, we try to connect with this theoretical part. Where the theory of women is also we understand why the Gautami was interested in the Sangha. What is the purpose of the Sangha? Why the Sangha is very important to create and generate the education for women. Everything I have the part of the social transformation. And that is region Ambedkar has. Ambedkar believe that I don't want to live in because I don't want to die in it. So this is the idea of whole process, which is we always carry forward in our legacy in the society, and we challenging the whole idea about Dalit feminism. Dalit feminism, as such, there is no theoretically perspective, there is no theoretically understanding, but thoroughly is not understand to the other women also, and even not in the academic, there is no proper discourse on that, which is talking about what is the Dalit woman and Dalit woman's position. We're looking at the social position of the Dalit women. We are talking about the agenda, the whole agenda of the liberation leads to the emancipation. And that is very important to understand the social structure and the Dalit women. The feminist movement, every mainstream feminist movements are believe that emancipation is the ultimate source of liberation. So we believe that emancipation is also possible the Buddhism. Because our social transformation as a Dalit, we're looking at in the Buddhism, because Buddhism is the only way to transform and to talk about the caste society. After that, After that, we are conducting the different kind of stories of women, of Dalit women, and I documented the stories. My book is also available on Amazon, where I'm looking at the Dalit women's emerging the patterns of caste-based violence. In the caste-based violence, there is a broader concept, is not looking at that, where is the caste matter for a violence, and why the caste is a source of violence. Because the Dalit women are the idea, and the idea of the society is that Dalit women are more vocal than other women. They are challenging the patriarchy, they are challenging the Brahminic system, they are challenging the caste system, and also they are more sensitive towards the democratic values. And these are the main things which is more power, make the Dalit women more powerful in the society and the village, which is more threatened for the dominant caste. Looking at all the caste-based violence, we are looking at the Ambedkar idea of the power relationship and patriarchy and caste relationship. We are looking at Dalit women's relationship with the power. So Dalit women's relationship with the power is not an internal power. They are not talking about not only talking about the Dalit man, but they are also talking about the government caste. Because power relationship always be changed, which is not changed in the different kinds of women. So that kind of experience doesn't have in the mainstream feminist movement. They don't have that kind of experiences. So we are always looking at that, how the dominant caste women, dominant caste men, and even the different kinds of feminist understanding, and there is a different shades of feminism. I have a tremendous respect for them. I'm not talking that they are good or bad, but I'm saying that our social position is totally different on the basis of our caste and our source of difference for the caste. And we are trying to connect that when we are looking at the caste, we are talking that it is suffering. Caste is also the point of the suffering. The when is the suffering is the only way where we always say that if I wanted to exit from the suffering, that emancipation is possible. So emancipation, further emancipation, I have to be take the one step forward to understand the Buddhism, and my Buddhism can give you the different kind of insight for me to casteless society. These are the whole idea I come from the research, and I'm talking about how the Dalit feminism is a different from other feminism. That is one point. And the second point, again, who is Ambedkar? The Ambedkar is not only thoughts for us. It's not only the ideological position. The Ambedkar is a part of day-to-day life. Because everywhere in India, if you pick any CRB data or anything, every state we have, you can take the example of the caste-based violence, you can take the atrocities happening across India, and majority of the Dalit women who are the survival of that result. So the women always get weaponized in the society, and particularly Dalit women is weaponized in the society because they have a low values, low dignity, they don't have a dignity, and they're a lower caste. Their identity is based on the lower caste. So Dalit identity can be transferred to the ism, which is a very important part of that. And that is the reason the Ambedkar idea, Ambedkar thoughts, and Ambedkar living life. We always believe that even when women, all the women in India, which is talking about Dalit women, in across other states, not only the Maharashtra. I visited 11 state in Maharashtra, and every 11 state we asked very simple question for a women: who is Ambedkar? They said it is a life of our, and it is a day-to-day life. Every day-to-day life we are suffering, and every day-to-day life we believe that if we are Ambedkarite women, because we are following the certain rules, we are following the democracy, and we are the non-violent society. Because there are a lot of stigma attached with the Dalit women, but they never be talking about the violent procedure. They were never be. They're fighting for the social justice through the democratic values. No other options for them. So this is the idea of the total understanding about my research, and now this research is going to be converted into book. My second book is that Ambedkar, Buddha and his Dhamma, of feminist reading, where I am talking about how the Buddha and Dhamma is giving the more different kind of insightful insight for a feminist movement, and how we can theorize our Dalit feminist idea, where we can take the position as a Dalit woman. Thank you for inviting me this speech. I was very busy in that day, so I'm not getting so much time for a speech actually. But once again, thank you. Thank you so
Firstly,
much.
yeah, first of all, congratulations for your, upcoming book that you plan to launch. And secondly, thank you very much, sharing your powerful insights with us and sharing your own personal experience. And those stories that you shared were, really insightful. And, your research does not only emulates the depth of Ambedkar's contribution, but also reminds us how his vision continues to shape today's struggles for justice. Moving forward, our next speaker is Dr. Obed Manwatkar, Interfaith professor from Chicago, USA. Dr. Manwatkar was unable to join us live today due to unforeseen circumstances, but very kind of him that he has shared a recorded message offering his perspective on Ambedkar's global impact. Let's take a moment to listen.
Greetings, SARIM family. I'm humbled to speak on the topic from untouchability to constitution, the story of India's greatest social reformer, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Salutations to him on his birth anniversary as the world celebrates him. Jumping into the topic on aims and objectives of the seminar of this webinar, uh, I I will try to cover up all the topics quickly so that the speakers may also have time. Uh, yes, so the aims, as far the aims and objectives of the webinar is concerned, of course, who was Dr. Ambedkar? Dr. Ambedkar was born on April 14th, 1891, in the Mahu Army Cantonment, Central Provinces, the present day Madhya Pradesh, in a Dalit family, in the scheduled caste family, uh, from the Mahar community. And he uh, his father and his ancestors were Kabir Panthis. They followed Guru Kabir Das, and so his teachings. And of course, uh, his early life is being marked with discrimination, segregation, and untouchability. His academic life was very prolific. He obtained a bachelor's degree in economics and political science from Elphinstone College, then master's from Columbia, and then doctoral degree from University of London in 1923. And then it's a whole journey. And amazing guy, amazing person. Love Baba Sahib. Of course, his role in independence movement was very complex because political discourse focused on persuading the British to cede greater power to Indians and eventually to leave India. But Ambedkar's intervention and advocacy centered more around the protection of the furtherance of Dalit rights in the marginalized community. And as a result, he often clashed with the Indian National Congress party, which was dominant at the time. He worked towards putting in place a political safeguard for untouchables. The first of which his presentation in South Committee was preparing the Government of India Act 1919. By the time Roundtable Conference in India came in 1930s, he had become the preeminent leader of the Dalit community. And of course, he argued frequently on separate electorates of backward classes, believing that this was necessary to transform them into solid political interest group. But Mr. Gandhi was against it. And so consequently, they uh, had to give in under the Pune Pact of 1932, giving up the separate electorates in exchange for reserved seats in provincial assemblies. Ambedkar also played a key role in social movements that fought for civil rights of Dalits. In 1924, he founded Bahishkrit Hitkarni Sabha and for the upliftment of depressed classes with the motto educate, agitate, and organize. In 1927, they organized a conference in Mahad, located in Raigad, where uh, he led a historic protest, which culminated a large group of Dalits drinking water from a public tank, breaking repressive social and physical norms that had existed from centuries. He organized public burning of Manusmriti at the same place. This ancient Hindu law book was the most well known among several scriptures, which placed cruel social and legal constraints of the untouchables. The burning was a strong statement against the centuries old discrimination, but repression faced by Dalits. He was a nominated member of the Bombay Legislative Council from 1926 to 1934. He founded Independent Labour Party in 1936 after Government of India Act 1935 introduced to responsible government at provincial level. Party was able to win 15 of the 17 seats, and in the Bombay Assembly elections of 1937, he then founded the All India Scheduled Caste Federation in 1942 as a popular political front for the Dalits. His contribution in constitution, the drafting process was often seen as synonymous with Ambedkar. He is often referred to as the father of Indian constitution and is probably most well known of all constituent assembly members. Ambedkar became a key figure in India's constitution making process due to the offices he held and his intervention and speeches in the assembly. He was the chairperson of the assembly's most crucial committee, the drafting committee, and a member of other important committees. As its chairman, he had to defend the draft constitution which the committee prepared and therefore intervene in nearly every debate. On behalf of SCM, Scheduled Caste Federation, he wrote and submitted states and minorities in Constituent Assembly, Constituent Assemblies of Subcommittee on Fundamental Rights, a mini constitution in itself. Ambedkar's intervention and speeches on various aspects of the constitution were insightful, well written, scrupulously researched. This won him the support and respect of other members of the assembly who appreciated leadership of the constitution making project. Ambedkar was appointed as first law minister of independent India in 1947. His most important intervention in this role in the attempt was to pass the Hindu Code Bill to reform Hindu personal law that dictated matters like marriage, divorce, succession, and adoption. Bill This bill faced legal intense criticism from both within parliament and outside. Ultimately, government related and withdrew the bill, forcing Ambedkar to resign in frustration in 1951. Uh, but yes, later governments adapted the bill in a different format, in a different ways. But yes, so that was his victory after resignation. That's what I would frame this. Hindu Code Bill is a debatable. It was for women's rights, by the way. And so, uh, of course, 1956, along with his 700,000, means 7 lakh people converted to Buddhism under his leadership. And he, it was an amazing, it was the biggest mass conversion in the history of humankind. So, of course, he was posthumously given the Bharat Ratna in 1991, the highest civilian award. And of course, he worked on struggle to achieve Dalit rights. He vehemently visioned and aimed to reconstruct the society by uprooting social levels of feudal inequality and caste system. He wanted a reformed society based on ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity. He also wanted a free Indian society from the evils of the caste system. That is the core annihilation of caste. Uh, of course, educating girls and women was his major objective. He realized that social emancipation could only be possible with education of the masses. That's why the educate, educate, organize slogan embodied in ideological basis of Ambedkar movements was prevalent in the social reform movement. Of course, he worked for political upliftment, transforming a class movement into revolutionary movement throughout India during the British rule. Uh, Land reforms and economic reforms, he had written a lot. He has worked on it a lot. He believed that the state has a very important role to play for the economic transformation of the state. He favored nationalization of land and leasing out to land to small groups of cultivators. He also realized the necessity of industrialization so that the surplus labor from agriculture could be moved to other productive livelihoods. He championed as a fighter for human rights, not only for Dalits, but also for unequal social system and oppressed classes, which included workers, farmers, and women. He was an extraordinary social reformer, not just social reformer. He was emancipator of the oppressed classes, scholar and educationist, the true champion of human rights. Dr. Ambedkar advocated for equal rights for all Indian citizens in the Constitution. As the chairman of the drafting committee, he designed the Constitution in such a way that all citizens are equal before the law. His ideology for the entire nation was be educated, be organized, and be agitated. Indeed, the challenge to his legacy in today's context is huge. Um, how to raise awareness uh, is up to youth now. How we can envision uh, his vision in today's context, his ways of doing things in that. Some of his ideals, many of the dangers he mentioned is still relevant today. One of the biggest dangers in politics, he mentioned hero worship. Hero worship, he quoted in Rana De Gandhi and Jinnah when he wrote Rana De Gandhi and Jinnah. He wrote that hero worship in politics is the sure road to degradation and leading to eventual dictatorship. So hero worship has taken shape in entire Indian subcontinent, in South Asia prevalently. That is the biggest challenge for today's generation: how to tackle the hero worship agenda and how to take his legacy forward. And of course, and of course, uh, how can he be an inspiration for upcoming generations? Indeed, social justice is Ambedkar's thing. When we talk about social justice, Ambedkar has to jump in. Without Ambedkar thoughts, there cannot be social justice. So, mm, as far as caste is concerned, it's a huge topic for if you talk about entire South Asia. And of course, every religion has been infected with caste. And today, so this idea that my religion is the best is needs to be shunned because every religion today has been infected with caste ideology, and you can see marginalized sections groups uh, suffering in every religion. So maybe the remedy for that, uh, when a Dalit, who is a foot soldier of every religion today, uh, has to come together, crossing the religious boundaries, and talk and share and make something, make plan something so that we can how can we rebuild a society together on the on the ideals of social justice visioned by Ambedkar. That will be the message for today. So thank you so much, and salute to Baba Sahib the Great.
Thank you. I would like to thank Dr. Manwatkar for that thoughtful and globally resonating perspective. Even in his absence, his words have traveled across borders to remind us that Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's ideas are not just national; they are universal in all call for equality and human dignity. Moving forward, our final speaker today is Dr. Abhay Kumar, an independent journalist and a writer from India. With his deep understanding of India's socio-political landscape, Dr. Kumar will provide a critical, analysis of how Ambedkar's visionary ideas continue to influence debate and drive change in India today. Over to you, Dr. Kumar.
Thank you very much. South Asia Research Institute for Minorities has once again held a very important webinar on Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's legacy and thought and his struggles. Friends, Baba Sahib Ambedkar's birth anniversary is being celebrated across the globe, particularly in South Asia, in India, on 14th of April. So we have to remember Baba Sahib Ambedkar, and Baba Sahib Ambedkar's thoughts and his struggles can guide us in many ways in almost every walks of our life. We know Ambedkar, who has struggled against caste-based inequality. Ambedkar has criticized Hindu religion for keeping Dalits or ex-untouchables in a very low positions. These facts, we all know it. But today, I would like to talk about Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's thought on minorities. The organization South Asia Research Institute for Minorities has always been advocating for the interest and welfare of the minority community. So I thought, why not we should go to Baba Sahib Bhimrao Ambedkar and learn from him that what is his idea of minority rights, what is his idea of minority, why minority is important. Because in today's right-wing politics, we always keep hearing such propaganda that minority is burden on the development of any community, and anti-minority attacks have risen almost everywhere. It may be more in one region, it may be less in another region, but minorities are suffering. So let's go back to Baba Sahib Bhimrao Ambedkar and ask him that how he has looked at minority question. Is this question very close to his heart? And whatever I have studied Baba Sahib Bhimrao Ambedkar, his writings, my own engagement is that Baba Sahib Ambedkar is very important philosopher, thinkers on minority rights. It is generally believed that Ambedkar has only said something about caste system and he has criticized Hindu religion. These are all fine. These are all engagement with minority is very, very important aspect of his life. So let me first clarify that his understanding of minority was not only related to religious minority. So when it comes to minorities are minorities, but Baba Sahib Ambedkar has also widened the concept of minority to include Dalits and Adivasi and all those who are historically discriminated, all those who are marginalized. So in Ambedkar's understanding, the term minority is a very broad based. It is not confined to religion, but he's also not denying the category of religious minority. And so we can say that minorities are religious minorities, like in the case of India, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, Jain, Buddhists, Parsis. In the case of Pakistan, it may be Hindus, Christians, Sikhs, and other communities. And minorities are also linguistic community, linguistic minorities. For example, if a region has a dominant Urdu speaker, and if if a community is speaking, let's say Sindhi or maybe Bengali, then that Sindhi community or Bengali community may become minority. So in India, there are several languages which are treated as minority languages. So on the basis of language, minority can also be defined. On the basis of caste, minority can also be defined like scheduled caste or ex-untouchables or Dalits. And Adivasis is also a minority. So Baba Sahib Ambedkar has, first of all, the contribution of Baba Sahib Ambedkar is that Ambedkar has broadened the concept of minority. And I think South Asia Research Institute of Minorities largely agree with Baba Sahib Ambedkar's view, because it is not focusing exclusively on religious minorities. I have often seen that in the panel, webinar of the South Asia Research Institute for Minorities. The caste minorities are also invited to speak and share their thoughts. So the caste minorities or the Adivasis or the tribal communities, they are also very important groups. They must be treated as minority, and their safeguard must be protected. So Ambedkar, the first point which you have to keep in mind in Ambedkar's understanding of minority, that minority is a very broad term. Minority is not confined to religious minority. Minority community includes those who are socially discriminated. Minority communities are those who are historically marginalized. Okay. Now the second point is, Baba Sahib Ambedkar believes that democracy is not something which is like eternal phenomena. Okay, like let's say rock or maybe mountain or maybe river. Even the physical entity, they also gets changed over the period of the time. But Baba Sahib Ambedkar does not think that democracy is like a rock or democracy is like a mountain, that it will be always there. Ambedkar believes that democracy is a system which must be protected. There are some threats to democracy. There are some challenges to democracy. Democracy cannot survive on its own. Democracy is not like, let's say that it's a house that you construct a house and then you sleep for 50 years and the house will be there. No, democracy can be attacked. Democracy can be demolished. Democracy can be threatened. Democracy can be raised to ground by other factors. So Ambedkar has identified which are the challenges of democracy, which are the threats of democracy. And Baba Sahib Ambedkar has identified one of the biggest threat to democracy is that there is a tendency in democracy that the ruling classes, the ruling caste, they try to concentrate power in their own hands. So the ruling classes, they try to believe, they try to propagate the idea that if power is concentrated, if there is a centralization of politics, then it's a great thing. Democracy will be strengthened. Baba Sahib Ambedkar believed opposite of that. Baba Sahib Ambedkar has said that democracy is against concentration of power. Democracy is against one class or one caste having all the power and other communities are kept marginalized. So in Baba Sahib Ambedkar's understanding of democracy is that a true democracy is one where minorities' rights are protected, where minorities' interests are protected, where opposition parties are given a space, where opposition parties are given a space to speak if they're involved in policies making. So Baba Sahib Ambedkar is saying that concentration of power is against democracy. And Ambedkar has said that there is a tendency by the majority community. In the case of India, he's giving the example and he's talking about caste Hindu. He has said that caste Hindus are wrong. They often think that majority government is sacrosanct. Majority government is sacred. In other words, the caste Hindu, the majority community leaders believe that once election is held and once majority party is able to get votes, it is able to win majority of the seats, then opposition parties, then minority communities should keep mum and they should not raise their voices. Ambedkar was against that. Ambedkar has said that in a democratic system, the government is formed through majority rule. The government is always majority government. But that majority government is not sacred. It is not muqaddas. It is not pavitra. It is not sacrosanct. He is basically asking caste Hindus that please do not get mistaken that once you have won the elections, then your rule is absolute and it is beyond criticism. Ambedkar is saying that we have to keep majority government in a relative term. That relative term in a sense that we do not have as yet a better mechanism to form the government. So majority government is acceptable till the point that the government is formed, but majority government should not try to crush the interest of the minority community. So Baba Sahib Ambedkar has said very clearly that minority community needs proportionate representation. But proportionate representation is not enough. I will give you one example. Suppose if there is a house which has got 100 members, and if there is a minority community which has got only 5% of the population, in that case, the minority community could only get 5 members in the house, and the 5 members will not be able to stop the bill, stop the law that is against their interest. So proportional representation is needed. Ambedkar is for proportional representation, but Ambedkar is also adding that proportional representation is not enough. And that is why he's also adding the term effective representation. Effective representation means that 5 members should be empowered in such a way that they are able to stop the bill which goes against the interest of the minority. In other words, minority, if I use the popular term, minority is given a sort of a veto power. Majority community can form the government, but it has to rule as per the wishes of the minority community. Minority communities' wishes cannot be bypassed. And that is why Baba Sahib Ambedkar has said that nationalism and communalism. Communalism is a particular South Indian, as a South Asian term, which means that if you are only fighting for the rights of your own communities, and if you think that other community is against your community, then you are communal. And that phenomena is called communalism. So Ambedkar is basically saying that in India, the upper caste people, the caste Hindus, when they try to serve their own interest, they say that it is nationalism. But when the marginalized community, when they try to articulate their own interest, it is demonized by saying that, oh, it is communalism, oh, they are communal forces. So Ambedkar is very much critical of the fact that communalism and secularism are used to silence the voices of the minority community. So Ambedkar's understanding of minority is very simple. Let me conclude by saying Ambedkar is saying democracy is not out there. Democracy is not something like a sun and the moon and the river and the sea and the mountain, that it will be there all the time. Democracy is something that needs to be protected. Democracy is something that is facing challenges, and these challenges include that the upper caste people, the caste Hindus, the ruling classes, they try to get all the power in their hands and they try to silence the voices of the minority. And Ambedkar has said that successful democracy is one where minority is given proportionate plus effective representation. A successful democracy is one where minority will and minority interest and minority consents are not bypassed. It is sad, both in India and outside India also, in many parts of the South Asia and also across the globe, minorities' voice are being suppressed, minorities' concerns are bypassed, minorities are being demonized. And today, Baba Sahib Ambedkar, if he were alive today, he would have launched a movement against majoritarian politics. He would have stood with minorities India, like the Dalits, the Adivasi, the Muslims, the Christian. And if he were in Pakistan, he would have been standing with the rights of the Hindus, the Christians, the Sikhs, and other minority community. So I feel that Baba Sahib Ambedkar has said many things which are very, very important. His thoughts on caste, his thoughts on economy, his thoughts on social reforms. But to me, one of Ambedkar's greatest contribution is his theory of democracy and his theory of minority rights. And Ambedkar has always believed that if minority rights are not protected, if minorities are not given legitimate space, if minority concerns are not taken care of, and if marginalized communities are not involved in policies making, if they are not given a space, then democracy cannot survive. And we have seen in South Asia and elsewhere also that when minority voices are suppressed, the polity gets destabilized and it leads to conflict, it leads to violence, and then everybody suffers. So today's message from Baba Sahib Ambedkar is that we must stand with the minorities, and I think I must congratulate and I appreciate the role South Asia Research Institute for Minorities is playing for defending the rights of minorities. And minorities do not necessarily mean only religious minority, they include socially discriminated community as well. Thank you very much.
I totally agree with you, Dr. Kumar, and thank you very much for your compelling analysis on Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. I believe that your reflections have given us so much to consider as we reflect on how Baba Sahib's transformative vision continues to challenge, inspire, and shape the India's democratic journey. As we wrap up our today's conversation about honoring a great man, of course, that is Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, it's about reigniting a movement. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's legacy compels us a challenge to challenge the inequality wherever it exists and to actively build a society grounded in justice, dignity, and opportunities for all. Thank you very much for joining us on this journey of reflection and discovery, along with Dr. Kamble, Dr. Manwatkar, and Dr. Kumar, of course. Stay with us as our estimated speakers continue to share their insights, and let's keep the conversations alive, Jai Bhim. Thank you very much.